one of the things that InfoComm has started doing. First of all, they started tracking the number of verified attendees that were end users, and that number has increased since they started tracking it. Does that shift change how vendors, how manufacturers are pitching to you directly, whether that's partner programs or whatever, versus through an integration partners that you have?
I think that's a little hard for me to speak on because as a woman walking the show floor, I kind of get treated differently than other attendees.
Still?
Yes.
I hate hearing that, I genuinely do.
Yeah.
Sir, your wife's hysterical, so I'll address this to you. This oven is lightning fast. It takes only 5 hours to cook a roast. Ooh, that's good news. You know you really don't cook enough roasts, Leela. Oh, women.
Cisco plays well with others. Sony invests in immersive experiences. And quantity versus quality. All that and more. Next on AV Week. This is AV Week, episode 776, recorded Thursday, July 2nd, 2026. The value of quality. This is AV Week, your weekly wrap-up of the biggest news and stories in the AV and the IT world. What exactly is the state of AV systems out there, really? Appson locks in their local showroom strategy, and another AV living legend from Commercial Integrator. Let's get into it. First up, Excite just dropped its mid-year AV cloud data report, and if you work anywhere near enterprise AV, this one is absolutely worth paying attention to. They combine polling from the AV Cloud Summit with real platform telemetry, and the headline number is kind of rough. Only 4% of AV data out there is actually ready for AI workflows. 68% is still messy or siloed. Meanwhile, 94% of managed devices now live in multi-vendor environments. So multi-brand AV isn't the exception anymore. It's just normal. Here's the part I found really interesting. They looked at more than 6,000 offline incidents, and roughly 2/3 of them showed up in shared dependency patterns. That means that most of those quote-unquote device down alerts you're chasing aren't isolated failures at all. They're connected to something else going wrong upstream. Now, Excite's entire pitch is that once you correlate devices across rooms, sites, networks, the whole thing, you start fighting alert storms and you start seeing actual root causes. Makes sense if your data is this fragmented. The AI-assisted operations are basically dead on arrival until somebody comes along to clean it up. Next up, Sony Pictures just made a $100 million strategic investment in COSM, the company behind those giant immersive dome venues doing what they call shared reality experiences. Sony is leading COSM's Series C round, taking a minority stake, and their CEO is joining the board directly. COSM already has venues open in LA, North Dallas, Atlanta. Detroit is landing this September. Cleveland is early next year. What's notable here is the why Sony is not just writing a check for the fun of it. They're explicitly talking about using this to extend their own IP. Films, TV, music, games, all of that into physically immersive spaces. Now that's a real signal for anybody in AV integration or experiential design, which several are. Big media is starting to treat shared reality venues as a legitimate distribution channel and not just a novelty. Then, of course, there's the World Cup. Maybe you've heard of it. Every 4 years, a bunch of people come along and play football. This time it's in North America, both Mexico, Canada, and of course the U.S. And this one's been kind of fun to watch, especially online. European fans traveling to the U.S. for matches have been absolutely stunned by the stadium technology. There's actually a viral clip of an English fan at AT&T Stadium in Dallas calling it, quote unquote, the best venue he's ever been to. And I don't think he was being sarcastic. The sentiment's been echoed by thousands of fans, making the same comparison to their home pitches. Part of it is just scale. AT&T Stadium holds around 80,000 people. SoFi Stadium cost over $5 billion to build. But people are pointing to more than just size. It's the LED ribbon boards, it's the giant screens, it's the in-seat connectivity, it's the entire experience-first design philosophy. One UK-based LED company actually put out a blog basically admitting that while European stadiums are innovating, US venues are still setting the bar on an immersive scale. Now, for anybody in display and integration, this tournament is turning into a global showcase for exactly what large format LED can do when budget isn't the limiting factor. Epson upgraded its global showroom booking platforms, cleaner interface, real-time appointment availability, instant booking confirmations. This is not the flashiest headline of the week, I will admit that, but it matters more than it looks like on the surface. They have been aggressively expanding their showroom footprint. New locations in LA, Mexico, Denver, Morocco, Saudi Arabia, over in the EMEA, Korea, and Vietnam, and APAC. More than 20 experience centers now across 4 continents. Making it easier to actually book time in these spaces is a distribution and a customer service play as much as it's a tech upgrade. Now, if you're a global LED manufacturer trying to compete on local presence, if you remove the friction from how do I get in front of a real display, this is exactly the kind of unglamorous move that compounds over time. And finally, this is my favorite story of the week. Commercial integrator just named Netgear's John Hinkle to its AV Living Legends list, and the timing is meaningful. John is stepping away from his full-time role at Netgear to launch his own venture, High Fidelity Marketing. Hinkle's story is a great one. He got his start running radio consoles back in 8th grade. He spent years in video editing suites, literally saying he quote-unquote played for a living, and he ended up winning an Emmy with the NBC sports team. Now, the best part of the Emmy story, the Emmy just showed up at his front door one day. No ceremony, no phone call, no heads up, just a FedEx guy with a box, and they even spelled his name right. He's also got a great line in the interview about audience and purpose being the 2 questions you should ask before creating anything, which, in a world currently drowning in AI-generated everything, feels like solid advice for all of us. Congrats, John, and good luck on the next chapter. That's your AV news for the week. Stick around. Our roundtable will look at Cisco cozying up to Zoom and the debate about quality versus quantity attendees at InfoComm. That conversation is next. This is AV Week. All right, welcome back. Now we bring in our fantastic roundtable to discuss all the other, interesting things that we've got going on. First and foremost, Brent Yenzer. Welcome, ma'am.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Also with us is my buddy just north of me, Mr. Jeremy Caldera. Welcome, sir.
Greetings. Glad to be here.
Good to see you both. I will note we're recording this on Thursday of the 4th of July week. So if any of us are a little punch drunk and vacation adjacent, you will excuse us. So first topic we're going to hit is Cisco. Cisco and Zoom just made, what platform do you standardize on a little bit less painful. Devices for Zoom Rooms launches in September, and it is Cisco's admission that everybody loves WebEx. It puts a fully certified native Zoom Room experience on select Cisco endpoints: the Desk Pro G2, the Room Bar, and the Bar Pro, Board Pro G3, and the Room Kit. Now, this is the upgrade from just regular SIP interoperability. That has been the workaround for folks that wanted Cisco but also had Zoom. It's also it's Cisco saying, yeah, we get it. WebEx is not the only game in town. They're also deepening their Microsoft Teams Room integration. At the same time, they're adding dedicated device management channels in the Control Hub, folding Copilot into its agentic tools. The bigger message from Tim's point of view from Cisco is that the meeting platform you pick, whichever one you do, whether it's Teams, Zoom, whatever, that should not decide whether or not you get a modernized Cisco experience. Jeremy, I'm going to pick on you because you spent more time in conference rooms and people that use Cisco than either Britt or I have put together. First question is, what is really the message here from Cisco?
I mean, I about had a heart attack and fell over when I read this. I mean, let's be honest, like Cisco's been the king of proprietary for how long, right?
Yeah.
I'm excited. I mean, it's great. It's fantastic because there's still those clients who are just so wholly ingrained in the world of Cisco, but yet they're still needing Teams rooms. They're still needing Zoom rooms. So how do we fix that? Cisco's doing it. And, what does that mean for them? It's good all around. I mean, they're finally jumping on the bandwagon. They're seeing the I don't want to say the previous error of their ways, but, they're at least opening themselves up to more integration, more collaboration. Let's be honest, more sales, right? You're going to have that start to expand. That's going to start to hurt other manufacturers in the realm of those people who already are giant Cisco houses. I don't know that it's going to be a giant decision-making factor for new people coming in to the Cisco world, if you will. I think it's going to, they've already people are kind of almost set in their ways, and there's very few people who are starting to look at new platforms. And if they do, it's from a very bigger, more holistic approach. But I think that the people who are already entrenched in Cisco, this is going to support them more than it's going to bring new people to the Cisco world, at least in my opinion. But good all around. Right?
You said ensconced in platforms already. Are you talking about the hardware platforms? Or are you talking about the soft codec, the codec platform?
It could be either, right? I mean, we've got clients that they're Teams houses, and a lot of them are focused on whether it's Neat or Panicast or whatever is their selected hardware of choice. When it comes to Teams rooms, it could be Crestron, it could be, you name it, XYZ, right? I don't think that those people are necessarily going to take what Cisco said here and uproot their entire ecosystem to transmit over. If they do, there's something else at play and other stuff going on that this could just add to that checkbox of many things that are being evaluated. But I think that the people who are entrenched with Cisco are no longer going to have to go to those other platforms in order to support a basic MTR room. Or, I know Cisco did it before, but like you said, it was SIP, it was all the other integration on the back end that was required that was costly and, harder to maintain and operate. So I saw some navigating over to other manufacturers, although they didn't want to do it. And this will prevent that from happening, which I think is good.
Brittany, there's not a whole lot on the Microsoft Teams room inside higher education, but there is Cisco. And I say that because Cisco is the standard in the IT world. Something like this, opening it up, because primarily higher education is Zoom or Meet, right, which Cisco does do both of those. What does this do when it comes to the hardware, the underlying hardware platform, where you guys in higher education, now you don't have to go to a secondary or third vendor for hardware. You can standardize on what your IT department is already familiar with, what they're comfortable with, right? The old adage, nobody's ever gotten fired for buying IBM. No one's ever gotten fired for buying Cisco either. So does that help or does that hurt in those conversations between the IT folks and the AV folks trying to make sure that classroom technology is stable and is usable?
Yeah, especially in higher ed, we say across the industry that AV is IT, but that is extremely true in higher ed. Like, we are housed within the IT department. So the more that we can communicate clearly with the other IT partners and kind of meet them where they are, the more successful we can be. So I think that this overall merge has the potential to be very successful in higher ed.
All right. Now, I saved some time because this one is going to be a longer conversation. And I'm not saying this is the last conversation I'm going to have about InfoComm 2026, but I'm going to try really hard for it to be the last conversation I'm going to have about InfoComm 2026. Last time you listened to this program, we were recording it from the show floor at roughly 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning, Vegas time. Had no idea what the numbers were. Numbers came out later that evening, like 5 or 6 o'clock Pacific. So this is the first time that we've been on the air and recording since then. Now, a couple of things that came out about this. Number one, a whole lot less complexity, right? Our friends over at Aurora, they unveiled, wireless Dante, which I still want to see, see that in the real world and see that working, but it's intriguing. Open control platforms, AV cloud, all these other things. The other thing that we saw was fewer people, although slightly fewer people. The verified attendees was 28,000, roughly 2,000 less than it was in 2025. I've spent 2 weeks talking to exhibitors since that show. The vast majority, and I'm going to say, I'll give you a percentage, 75%, said that they were quality conversations. They likened it to the 2021 InfoComm in Orlando the year after COVID. The quality conversations. Now, I don't know if they were doing that to salve their own wounds. I don't know if they were doing that to be nice to AVIXA, but that is what they said. So Brittany, as not only a higher education person, somebody that, according to AVIXA, there was an increase of end users this year. Also somebody who's heavily involved in HETMA. You guys had a number of folks in your booth. Overarching question, should AVIXA focus on the quality of the attendee and not the quantity?
I would lean toward yes. I guess I would question what is the measure for quality of attendee. But I do think that, if you have people who are really engaged and having those conversations and they know what they're looking for and they're going with purpose, that's better than having more people wandering aimlessly.
Caldera, you spent the weekend before training an awful lot of people heading out into getting their CTS and their CTSDs and their CTSIs. I'm basing this just on following you on social media. It looked like a very full room. It looked like a room that was probably more full than the previous years. Same kind of question, though, as an integrator, as somebody who not only you were there, but also you were there with customers and clients. Is it an era? Is it a season where we're focusing on quality and not the actual number?
Are they actually focusing on quality and not the actual number? I mean,
should they?
I mean, the answer to that question is always yes.
Okay.
Right. But okay, so there's a number of different things at play here. As far as the education side goes, and I don't know statistics or numbers, but the way it felt to me is there were less students there. But again, the quality of the available classes to take were the high caliber classes. It wasn't like a whole flood of a bunch of stuff. So fine, great. Okay. Same thing applies to the trade show itself. If you can get, I do my own small little mini trade show, right? I would much rather have quality over quantity any day of the week, right? Now, that's easy to do on the scale that I operate at, but this is InfoComm. So there is a lot of, let's just be honest from the business perspective, they need quantity to cover costs, to justify booth space, to justify all this other stuff. So, at what point do the manufacturers say, okay, the cost and spend for a show from a business perspective, right, is the value is there. Now, granted, I think they're all going to say quality over quantity 100% of the time, but you still got to have numbers. Right? You still got to put numbers up. So it's a mixed bag as to how you look at that. But yeah, I think in my opinion, quality always over quantity. It's just that, the thing I don't want them to do is sell the idea of that and not actually follow through with that, right? I don't want that to be the excuse as to why the numbers are down. I want that to be the actual reason why the numbers are down, right? Don't just look at that as, and I'm not saying they're doing that. I'm just saying that I just don't want that to be the reasoning behind it, right? So, but again, 100% on board with that whole concept.
One of the things that I wrote in my wrap-up piece was that maybe this is just a 30,000 person show for a moment, and that's okay. The economics of trade shows in general. This is Tim's opinion. You can throw things at me. You can hit me up at tim@avnation.tv if you don't agree with this. The economics of trade shows is very, very difficult from a return on investment standpoint. The ROI is very difficult to keep track of. The booth or not, the space, not even the carpeting, but the space, the actual, the block of concrete they give you, it is not cheap. And then you start putting on the carpet, and then the booth, and then you fly in your people there. Cost this year was way up. right? Just across the board, everything from flights to hotels to food to everything, right? In talking to a number of manufacturers, they reduced the number of people that they were bringing. In talking to integrators, they reduced the number of people that they were bringing. Higher education and even corporate. Last year, they may have brought in 5 people. This year, they brought 3, right? So there was certainly headwinds going against Avixa in this show. Add to all of that the uncertainty, add to all of that the difficulties when it comes to getting in the country if you're not from here, all of those things, right? They still managed to say, okay, we're roughly 28,000 folks. They lost 2,000 year over year. They've got some things going into 27 that I think are interesting. I'm aware of Lollapalooza. We had a Resi show here for a long time. My dear friend Matt Scott hosted it. He is fully aware of that. He's educated me on it. I understand that show, and I for what it is, I appreciate it. I'm going to be interested to see how Avixa puts this into that show. Doesn't feel like it fits, but I will hold my judgment until the end of next year's show. Same thing with Reside and the residential side. Again, I will hold my judgment until the end on the Friday of that next year's show. Those are absolutely number plays, right? Those are absolutely geared to get more people in the show floor who may not have come this year, right? But the same thing happened this year. They developed new activations like the pitch, which was the sports and media entertainment one. That was fantastic. The residential, the retail activation where they were showing digital signage and all this stuff, really, really well done. But I'm going to be curious to see what they do in the quality over quantity over the next couple of years.
I mean, those numbers, if you talk about it, with considering how many people, and I heard the same thing, but people sent a reduced amount of people across the board, integration, end users, manufacturers, all. So if everybody sent less people, right, you think the numbers would be way down. But it's 100% true that if you're sending less people, you're going to be a little pickier about the quality of the people that you're sending, right? So, I mean, I'll be honest with you, I try to take some technicians every year. I didn't this year. It was myself, it was my director of operations, and my head of sales, right? So again, 3 of the 4 quality people in the decision-making process of equipment and things in our nature. So, and I'm just a small guy from the Midwest. You extrapolate that across everybody, you're going to get that. So yeah, the quality is there if people are sending less people. So, I mean, it's just going to become a numbers game, mitigating costs versus quality. I think that they should always be constantly trying to improve and expand anyways, you know what I mean, to try and bring new people in. So, I mean, I'm on board with all the other stuff they're doing. Like you said, I want to see how it plays out. Yeah. But, I mean, I'm never going to fault them for that. So, I mean, I think that that's good. And again, when it comes to education before the show, I'd much rather see quality over quantity any day of the week. And the last thing I want them to do is get into that financial thing where they just want it, where it's a money grab, right? You never want people to feel like it's that, right?
That's fair. Brett, I do want to bring up the end user piece again, because one of the things that InfoComm has started doing, first of all, they started tracking the number of verified attendees that were end users, and that number has increased since they started. It has increased since they started tracking it. Last year was a bit of a dip. There were fewer, from a percentage standpoint, fewer end users last year than in 24. Sorry, math in my head is not a good thing. But this year there was an increase again. Does the shift not only to Avixa paying attention and measuring that, but also the increase of that, does that shift change how vendors, how manufacturers are pitching to you directly, whether that's partner programs or whatever, versus through an integration partners that you have?
I think that's a little hard for me to speak on because as a woman walking the show floor, I kind of get treated differently than other attendees. So I feel like I lean toward more likely to be ignored regardless of whether or not I'm marked as an end user, unfortunately. So maybe not the best question for me.
I'm going to ask this to be blunt. Still?
Yes.
I hate hearing that. I genuinely do. So,
Yeah.
I mean, end users are critical. I'm glad to see a lot more end users coming, right? Because we as integrators are always trying to sell ourselves, right? We're trying to sell the technology. We're trying to explain why it is we do what we do and everything that goes behind the systems and solutions that we put in. And sometimes it's hard to, sell that, to express that, to show people that. So anytime I can get end users there, and it's never going to be most of our clients, but it's going to be our key clients. I had key clients there, and I was able to escort them to some of the newest technology that I was trying to explain to them in the months prior. And as soon as they could see it, it was, yes, we want to go with that. Right. It helped close the deal, if you will. Right. So there's a value to there as an end user. I don't like your experience, Britt.
So, Britt, I'm going to give you, you take as long as you want on this. You have a magic wand. You can wave this magic wand, and what you say is going to happen. But talk for a second to a manufacturer who has a booth. I don't care if it's a 10 by 10 or if it's 1,000 by 1,000. Ideally, what would be your experience when you walk into somebody's booth? I don't care what your badge says. What would ideally be your experience?
I would want them to ask me where I'm coming from, what I do, what interests me, what problem I'm looking to solve, and then show me what they have at that booth that addresses my needs, and to be willing to talk to me at a high level and not ask me I walk it says CTS after my name on my badge, and I get the CTS flag, and they still will ask me well, do you know what XYZ is? Please just assume that I know.
That's a fair point. That they should just assume, because that's the fair way to put it. Because even to the opposite of that, it's always I feel like everybody always assumes, that I kind of know, and they'll go right into the technical details for me. And there's a few cases where I have to stop them and say, hey, what is give me the background on that. You know what I mean? And I think that should just apply across the board. But that's a great great way to look at that.
Yeah, and so for example, because I said XYZ, but just to be clear, I've been asked if I know what AV over IP is.
Let's be fair. There's still too many old school, quote unquote, people in the business that don't
and refuse to know.
Yeah,
that's beside the point.
That they don't want to acknowledge. But I will say this, from a manufacturer standpoint and the people in the booths, the one thing that is a challenge for me is that bringing an end user somewhere is, I don't want to be talking about my costs in front of my end user, right? I don't want to be getting too technical sometimes. I want just that big picture of what it is, because you can get into the technical weeds later. Give me the big picture, right? Or if I have more technical questions, I'll ask you. But there's a variety of things to look at there. And I think the manufacturers perhaps aren't doing the greatest job with yourself, Britt, and those, like you, but they're also doing it with not realizing that there's as many end users as there are. They're not approaching those conversations correctly. They're still approaching those conversations with me or with my clients there as I'm the integrator, they're the integrator. That's not the case. And I think that fundamental shift of the actual number of people that are coming from the end user standpoint needs to be seen more by those manufacturers so that they approach those conversations in the booth slightly differently.
Yeah, I'm still thrown back a bit, and it actually reminds me of a conversation I had a number of years ago with a woman. She went from being a manufacturer, she worked in manufacturing for many, many years, and through life and one thing and another, and the company she worked for, they had a bunch of layoffs, and she went and worked for a corporation. And again, this woman spent decades on the show floor in booths, okay? That was her experience. And she walked her first InfoComm with an end user badge on for the first time in 20 years. And she had Britt's experience, right? Where some of it may have been the fact that she was a woman. Some of it may have been the fact that she was, had an end user badge on. And had this same conversation, Britt, and it was 6 years ago. And that's why I was saying still, right? I am still shocked at the fact that that was your experience, which is a little upsetting. So, yeah.
Always room for improvement. And I tell you, as every year that goes by, I think it's going to get better and better with, some of the old school people, if you will, retiring out and moving on.
I mean, they'll die eventually, right?
That's the way I was trying to, as politically correctly as possible, say that. So I'm glad you just threw that out there, Tim.
I'm too old for politically correct anymore. Okay. All right. I think I've done enough damage for myself. Britt Yenser, how do people connect with you?
Yep, I'm on LinkedIn, Britt Yenser CTS. I'm also still kind of on X as Brave Brit, although I've become a little bit more of a casual lurker.
Nothing wrong with that. And how do people listen to your fantastic podcast?
Oh, yes. So Brave Space is available at higheredav.com as well as Apple, Spotify, your typical podcast platforms.
All right. Mr. Caldera, thank you, sir. How do people connect with you?
Yeah, find me on LinkedIn, Jeremy Caldera. And again, I'm a casual user of X anymore, so I don't know what's up with that, but that seems to be the way it is. But that's how I've always been with that. You can also find us on pearltechnology.com is our website. So,
very good. Thank you, sir. My name is Tim Albright. Don't follow me anywhere, but go by the website, AVNation.tv. That is AVNation.tv. You will find this program and a host of others. This was probably the last time we'll talk about InfoComm 2026 for a minute. You can see all of our coverage at avnation.tv/IC26. IC26. Also, a brand new EdTech live from the show floor of InfoComm 2026 and the HETMA booth. So you can check that out as well. So all that and more at avnation.tv. It's avnation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. That is all the time we have for AV Week.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
This is AV.
This
is AV Nation.
This is AV Nation.